We're going live for the panel in 3,
Fresh
2,
and like keep
1.
adding like agents and stuff.
Hey, gentlemen. How you guys doing today?
Hey, how are you?
All right.
Hey, there we go.
Doing
And
pretty
we're
good.
up here for the panel. We're all good, finally. Took a little bit to get set up. Sorry that the Rainbow Six games ran a little bit long.
Good.
Just a little. So, how you guys doing today?
I'm doing swell.
Yeah,
living life.
awesome. You guys want to go through and introduce yourselves one-on-one? Let's start with Arnaud. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, for sure. I was the UBC Esports Association president last year. I was in charge of pretty much everything. I come from a Super Smash Brothers background.
Mm-hmm.
I guess a bit about me. I'm half Senegalese, half French, and I pretty much moved to Vancouver for university. Fell in love with the Smash scene here, and then eventually just fell in love with the community, and I wanted to just do more for my club. And then I became president last year. It was a lot of hard work, and just great to be on the panel with these wonderful people.
That's awesome. So what about you? Bryce? You want to talk about you?
Sure. Bryce Johnson. I was the head of social media and marketing for Penn State Esports. From Pittsburgh, PA. I moved back, and I'm in the city of Pittsburgh now. I'm doing work at CCAC, trying to run a funded esports program there. And I kind of got into esports just off of being really into video games. I realized that I was not good enough to be a pro myself, so I wanted to support the industry in any way I could.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So what about you, Jason? What about you?
Yeah, my name's Jay. I'm coming from an Overwatch background. I was the president at Mississippi State esports program, and now I'm the CEO of Kid Collective.
That's awesome. And last of all, we got Sergio Brack here. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Sergio. I'm currently the president of Ole Miss Esports. I'm also a co-founder of College COD. Call of Duty is where I got my start. I got to league play ever since then. That was all she wrote for me. Much like my counterpart here, shortly realized I wasn't good enough to make it pro, but still wanted to be in the scene as much as I could. So that led to me collabing with people to make College COD what it is. And I fell in love with the collegiate scene shortly after.
That's awesome. So the 5 of us are about to do a panel. Unfortunately, we had one more, Zeke Carcella. He was going to join us. It's a shame he wasn't able to make it. He had to pick up, I believe, his mom from the airport. But the rest of us will be here to talk about, collegiate esports and their experiences. So without further ado, let's get going. So we'll just go through in order, roughly. It'll be Arnaud, Bryce, Jay, and Sergio in that order. And just you've already really talked about kind of what you do within your programs, what those are. But if you guys want to expand upon that, say where you are, what your program does, how expensive is it, and what do you do inside of it?
Well, in general, just for UBC Esports,
Mm-hmm.
we are a AMS club, one of the largest clubs on campus. Last year, we were really focused on events. Obviously, events have taken a bit of a turn this year. And in the past, we've done pretty well competitively. And in general, we have 10 games, different game departments, and we did it. It was actually the first year we actually collabed with our university as well. I flew out with the university president to do a conference in front of 100 university presidents. We worked with UBC Rec for more casual introductory esports tournament to really try to get in, more exposure to esports. We had a careers night that was really, really big. We had an expo as well, and overall, we also ran our gaming lounge pretty well last year, if I do say so myself. We had 20 gaming PCs. It's free for everyone to just come and play as a student. So we run that, and overall, it's a super sick club, and it was a good experience. It was tough, but it was a good experience. Yeah.
That's awesome. What about you, Bryce? You were the the social media manager for the Penn State University. So what was that like?
So My time at Penn State University, it consisted of me coming to weekly meetings for all of our divisions, taking photos, and doing social media postings for those meetings, and expanding into monthly events that we had where I took photos, did social media postings, and did all the volunteer work that I could. Once you're inside the system, you start doing a lot of work and you get your hands in a lot of other different places. So I spent a lot of time learning about the different sets of esports and how to rise in the collegiate scene and how to rise in a more professional scene too, with a lot of their business related stuff.
Oh, cool.
And we spent a lot of time over there working. We were 100% student run and led. We didn't get any administration support for that one at all. It was just us.
That's pretty cool. So what about you, Jay? So I realize that you are now part of Kid Collective. You want to tell us more about what Kid Collective does, what their goal is, and what your role is in there as the CEO?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we just got started. Recently, we got started with Valorant Season 0, which was a Valorant tournament series. We got started with Ava Power, who was actually like my first ever partner in Collegiate. We did the Bully Land with them, and that was really sick. But basically an esports organization looking to do what I've watched esports orgs do in the past, which is be content machines, competitive machines, media machines at large. We're just kind of looking to do that with my brand at Kid Collective. So it's kind of what we're aiming to do here now.
That's really cool. What about you, Sergio, as the president of Ole Miss Esports at the University of Mississippi?
So like this year was a big like transitional period for us. This is our first year as like a varsity esports organization. We had like news outlets and media come to the school, and they gave us like official contracts and stuff. So that was really big for the Southeast as a whole. I think a lot of schools sort of latched onto that and saw that as a means to further what collegiate esports is down here, because we're behind definitely in this region compared to schools in the West and even like Northeast. So like the typical like day for me is just planning and always looking at what's next. There's always more innovation that needs to be had, and like find a healthy competition within like other organizations to sort of further what we're doing, because at the end of the day, like a win for one collegiate esports org at this point is a win for another, because our administrations could look at that and see that they need to push boundaries even further. So just working really close with administration and managing pretty much all operations within our organization, whether that be social media or content or competition, and just really getting to work with some really great people like on my executive council, and just making sure that everything is where it needs to be in terms of competition and in terms of our community.
Yeah, so that's really cool. So for everyone in this stream saying that the video is lagging, yep, I've run into a pretty common problem that happens when you play something like Rainbow Six, which sucks, where your graphics card won't swap from doing 3D rendering to 2D, so it stays at 3D. The only solution is a computer reset, and I don't think we want to do that right now. So I'll take care of that after the panel, but for now, I'm sorry. This is what it's going to end up looking like. At least the audio is fine, so really happy about that. But that's it's not really a hosting thing. It's just like my entire computer is going to stay lagging the entire time. So it doesn't matter if the video host changed. This is just where it sits for now, and I'm really sorry about that. So with that out of the way, let's get into some of the juicier questions for you guys. So I know not all of you guys will be able to answer this because it's not timing relevant. But yeah, prior to COVID-19, when a bunch of your campuses shut down, what did a regular week of running your program on campus look like, and in what capacity? Like how many people were you interacting with? Where were you meeting? Those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, I was working my co-op job from 8 to 5, and then pretty much from 6 to 10, I was president of the UBC Esports Association. So there's a lot of meetings, a couple of proposals I was writing. I was working on that careers night. I was working on the gaming expo. Every week we had so many events. November was brutal because we had like we had the Worlds viewing party, right, back to back to Mario Kart party at our local university bar in collaboration with the Chinese Varsity Association, right? And then after we had our huge charity tournament, Play with Heart, organized by our Smash team. So it was really back to back to back to back. It was relatively exhausting. I think like all the collegiate leaders can attest that running a club, especially if you're not paid, it is a lot of work at the end of the day, and you do it for a lot of the passion. So yeah, it was just a lot of extroverted work, and I am an extrovert at the end of the day, but even that was a little much for me, just interacting with so many people, different types of people too, because you deal with students, some younger students, you deal as well with your administration, also external partners. So yeah, you're dealing with a lot of people in general. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't realize I muted myself.
Good.
So for my weekly row there, we had multiple divisions, which is each game had a specific group of people playing it, and they would have weekly meetings. We'd had multiple of those meetings a week, sometimes 2 a day, sometimes 1 a day, and I would go to all of them just to take pictures and be a part of the community, to hear what everybody was saying.
Okay. Yeah.
So we could do our different campaigns online. When I wasn't there, I was working on the social media postings, making sure the pictures are edited and posted up to our social medias. And then on the weekends, and sometimes also other weekdays, we would plan larger monthly events where we would try to gather the wider community at our school. A lot of casual stuff, a lot of playthroughs and things like that. And eventually ending up doing a one trimester. At the end of one trimester, we end up doing a large tournament where we spend a lot of time working on that during the weekends as well.
Okay, cool. That's pretty cool. What about you, Jay? What's a day in the life of a CEO look like?
At this point, sun up, sundown work. I think the last 3 days have been literally me waking up at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning and working until I couldn't anymore on just proposals, trying to get this thing up and running to try to find some dollars to do so. But it kind of is the same thing as it was in collegiate. We woke up every single day trying to make our dreams come true, essentially. And that's basically exactly what we're doing here at Kid Collective. It's just waking up every single day, trying to do what we can do to make our dreams come true.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, what about you, Sergio? How is it being a president of an esports club?
Yeah, so I actually love this question just because based on previous media stuff that I've done in the past couple of months, people seem to think that esports isn't really affected by COVID, especially at a collegiate level. And so for us, we have our school usually funds 2 trips for us to compete in per semester. So we usually travel to other schools in whatever capacity and play in their tournaments. So yeah, of course, we had 2 planned for the spring semester. But those ended up falling through as they became canceled. Travel became restricted by our administration. And so just having that disappointment fall through, and then also planning our own event, our own LAN event, and not being able to put that into fruition and having to transition into an online event definitely sucks. And then before that, it was really just once again just planning and always thinking about what's next. Plenty of administrative meetings, plenty of meetings. We have weekly executive council meetings in person. And that those are really good for camaraderie and just being involved in person with who you're working with. It just builds so much bondage that you can't really get through Discord. And just also just being really in tune within my community, just being able to become best friends with the people in the organization and being able to see them, just go see a movie or go out to eat, different stuff like that. It just means a lot. And just meetings with administration, we do game nights and movie nights, and just not being able to have those in the same capacity anymore after the whole COVID situation definitely hit us really, really hard.
Okay, cool. Glad to see it. And I realize that we're now no longer lagging, I think, on stream, so we should be mostly fine coming up. Yeah, oh, sweet. So I think what happened is, I have the wallpaper engine from Steam. It loaded the next wallpaper. It counted it as being 2D, and we're all good. Technology is great, guys. So yeah, it's really cool. It sounds like all you guys are pretty hefty sun up to sundown work. I think esports, because it's not, at least especially collegiate esports, because it's not super highly regulated by something like laws and whatnot, means that there's a lot of outside like current 9 to 5 work days. So you're seeing, like you said, like sun up, sundown work, whether you're a CEO of your own like little esports organization and tournament runner, or whether you're doing social media, all these things take a lot of work to get through. So with all of that going on, for those of you who are in an esports club, how supportive would you say your universities are of that club, whether it's financial support or support with contacts or outreach? How supportive do you think they are about that stuff?
I think they were relatively supportive this year. And I'm going to say this year specifically because previous years, from what the past leaders have told me, they have not. But this year was a big pivot point. The president of the university actually reached out to us and took a big interest, and that kind of like spiraled into other different factions. So it was a trickle down. So I guess we got really lucky. But he was also interested in us in the first place because we invited him to Battle BC2, which was one of our largest tournaments ever. We had like 700 people for Smash, and he came and he was really impressed. So it started with that. And in terms of like the type of support, they adapt with us, right? So they haven't given any like big scholarships yet, but they're trying to wait for the right time, the right moves to do it and see the right places. And I hope they continue to do that because I think that is the smart move to not maybe go overboard, but to make incremental adaptations to help the students out. Yeah.
Cool. What about you?
So I have a unique perspective on this one here because at Penn State, I had absolutely no infrastructure support from the school. But as I moved back to Pittsburgh and I went to a local college here, I was actually reached out to by the dean of students over here to create an esports program for them over here. But at my time at Penn State, it was we weren't really on the map to any of the higher ups over there, so we didn't receive any report or extra funding or even like coverage for a lot of our achievements. It was a long uphill battle against that. That's why we focused so heavy on our marketing and trying to make sure we had our own socials up and running and making connections for ourselves. But I'm going to say now that I'm a part of a program that has feedback and support from my administration who wants to put money into the program, there's a lot more support available to a lot of people interested in running their own programs right now.
Cool.
And yeah, I would say about the same at Mississippi State. When I got started, there was very little infrastructure, very little interest in esports and gaming as a whole. But as we kind of started to put things in place and as they started to understand just what gaming and esports was as a whole, they kind of started to open up like their hearts and minds to the idea of making this a bigger thing on campus. And I think once basically we got to a place where they started to tell us what they wanted and we started to tell them what they wanted, and we can come up with kind of actionable plans to do things that we both wanted to do. They started showing us more of that support. We're kind of Arnaud was talking where it's not always financial, it's not always a big scholarship, it's not always sending us to DreamHack, but it's like here's a check for $500 to help you with this prize pool, or here's a venue for free for this event that you're having. It's just support where they could give it a lot of times. But my experience at Mississippi State was pretty positive when it came to administration involvement.
Cool. What's your story like, Sergio?
So yeah, like I honestly can't speak enough praises of our administration, especially within the past couple of years. They've been really good to us. They've been really good to me. I don't know if that's because I'm like the token black guy in our org or what, but for the most part, they've been really good to me. Esports coordinator's been really good. Every meeting I've had has been really, really well thought out, and it's just been really good to see people genuinely listen to what you have to say and something you're passionate about. And in terms of travel and stuff, like I said, they have been gracious enough to give us 2 trips per semester, which might not seem like a lot to some schools, but to us that means the world because we haven't had that previously. And with Mississippi State collabing on the Egg Bowl, Esports Egg Bowl, I think was huge for us, and getting both of our schools to recognize what we were doing. And so just having that event and seeing administration show up to it, and even just from a supportive standpoint, it doesn't involve substantious gain from us. We in last year we had a Call of Duty team that made it to like the #1 in the nation, and we lost in the grand finals to Humber University. And I was like super beat up about it because we had worked so hard that whole season to fall short. And the next morning I woke up to an email from administration of all of them like telling us how proud they were of us and how they were all watching like in their homes and stuff. And so just to have something like that that's not even tangible and people just like genuinely interested in what you're doing and there to support you and like what the craft that you're doing, it definitely means a lot. Now I do think it could be quicker. I think the upkeep could be quicker, but I think that comes with like the knowledge, right? I don't think they know just how behind we are, and I try to stress that to them a lot, how far behind we are compared to some other organizations, some other clubs. But I think like all things, it comes with time. And I think we had to be willing to talk to our administration, thoroughly and be understanding that these people are older a lot of the time, so they genuinely don't know. But that's just conversations that we have to make it better.
Oh yeah, and so there's there's some variation between how supportive your universities was. For example, like Sergio, they're supporting you. At least they're supporting you emotionally. They're providing like not necessarily financial support, but they're like their approval and all that stuff. And Bryce said that he had basically none. There was no infrastructure at Penn State. So Steven's asking like, do you guys think that support differs based on the games themselves and the size of that gaming community, like whether or not you're like a League of Legends focused club with a huge community, or like Heroes of the Storm or Hearthstone, something that's smaller, more niche? Or is it more about just the size and the growth of like the club and that environment within the school itself?
It's a really, really good question. I think every single, at least collegiate esports club is different and has different priorities and different strengths and different weaknesses. For us, League of Legends was big and Smash was big as well. And events, it used to be competition, used to be really good, but events has always been a really, really big strong point for us. And so that's what the university has really put forth as much as possible. I'll give a very, very specific example. We had the UBC Gaming Expo, which I organized and hosted, and they covered flights for Travis Gafford, Zaire, and Nicole Lapointe. And that was super, super helpful, right? So while they didn't fund a $20,000 scholarship, right, they did help fund some flights and hotels, which does it is for a student association, those are like significant costs, right? And so I think it does depend on what your strength is as a university association. Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
I think it actually has a lot to do with that. And I think like in mine and Sergio's situation, it has a lot to do with what the school's doing and what their administration cares about. Because like I said, with Ole Miss and Mississippi State, they care a lot about football and baseball. And that's like here, it makes them money. But I know like Missouri is an SEC school. They're barred from competing in NCAA like championships or tournaments right now. So they don't make money from sports. So they just put like 6 figures into an esports program because that's their only other way to make money on athletics in the next 3 years. So I think when it comes to the SEC and like administration involvement, a lot of it has to do with what the focus of the school is or how they can make money when it comes to like athletics or school programs.
To piggyback off of that, for my time at Penn State, there was a lot of focus on our competitive aspects of our organization. And that was because the importance of competitiveness in any Penn State program. And that was in the way that we knew we would get on their radar, is if we had teams that were winning or placing or receiving scholarships or getting prize money, something that'll get them interested to possibly receive support in the future. And while at my new school, we have the polar opposite, where now they're focused on just recruitment and building a community around the people. And they want to create a program that's more focused on community events and moving forward esports careers from this school.
Yeah, so sort of like going off of what Jay said in terms of like people or schools in the SEC like paying more attention to like our actual sports. I'm not even gonna sit up here and lie. Like most of the progress that came from Ole Miss was because we were like a scapegoat. We had a lot of bad publicity like with our football team, with our former coaches, and like even like racial disparities on campus. And so people, saw what we were doing in esports and they latched onto it as like the good news on campus. And that's fine. Like I'm perfectly fine with that because it got us to where we are today. Obviously, it's not ideal, but you got to take what you can get sometimes. And I do think that winning is definitely important. You know, us losing the first Egg Bowl and coming back to win the second one was like really big. And I also think, you know, I don't think administration took us that seriously until like the Call of Duty team had that run. I think that was our first like big run in collegiate esports where like the whole like country was talking about like Ole Miss esports. And so just having that, I think really brought us like a long way because our sports teams aren't winning anything right now. So I think like continued success with our esports organization is definitely going to come from, you know, our teams doing well. And I think right now our focus is really just trying to give them as much resources as possible with what we have to make sure that they do have that kind of success.
Yeah, so
you had to bring up the second Egg Bowl victory, huh?
I did.
Great. So yeah, it really sounds like it's kind of a balance. Not so much like how big the games are necessarily, but the fact that one, there's obviously like support by students, and that the club is a decent size, and that you're able to, at least in some cases, go out and show results for what the school is giving you. Like if they're giving you money or they're giving you resources, you're able to use that and turn it into, you know, whether it's, you know, Egg Bowl victories or larger events that are helping people. And that's all really cool. So I hope that answers your question, Stephen. But I want to shift over to you know, the heavier side of what we want to talk about today, which is just being Black in general in, you know, the esports community as a leader in the collegiate field. Because we heard Aaron, Ashley, Simon talking earlier today about how it's difficult being a Black woman in the professional field. So to start, you know, there are different types of racism, you know, microaggressions and just outright racism. So can you describe, you know, the different types of racism, or how you've interacted with them, and your experiences with them to our audience here?
Who wants to go first?
You go ahead, man.
I think one of the biggest to talk about, one that like bothers me a lot, and I think you guys will probably be able to share the sentiment when it comes to like microaggression racism, I guess, is being told that I sound white.
Yes.
That's something that bothers me to my core. And like I said, I'm as a leader and somebody who's been well spoken my entire life. That's something I've been hearing my entire life, so it's something that has bothered me for a long time. The biggest like thing that bothers me about it, and as I've been reflecting on it for years at this point, is just kind of like, what did you expect me to sound like? Because it's kind of, it gives me the idea that you had an idea of what I was going to sound like before I started talking to you. So by telling me that I sound white or I'm so well spoken, it's like, well, damn, dude, what did you think I was going to sound like before I opened my mouth? That's one of the things I think I deal with in esports a lot. That bothers me, truthfully.
So I think like for me, in terms of microaggressions, it comes like from the general like student body. Like and I think it comes from the sentiment that like behind every successful Black person there has to be a catch, right? Like we have to be an athlete. We have to have a lot of money from our rich fathers or something like that, you know? And so like one thing that comes to mind is like I was in organic chemistry lab one day, and they left it up to us to find partners to work with. And I'm like one of the most introverted people. Like if I don't know you, I'm not really going to talk like that. And so, you know, these two white women came up to me and they said, yo, like, let's work together. I was like, okay, cool. So we started talking about like our road to college and like our options and stuff like that. And I mentioned to them that Vanderbilt was on my radar, which is a really good school here in the SEC. And they were like, oh, Vanderbilt. So do you play basketball or do you play like any sports? I was like, no, I'm just like, I'm kind of like smart. I got good grades in high school, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So that, like just the sentiment that there's always like a catch with us and that we just can't genuinely be hardworking people is something that's really bothered me. Yeah. And also like, I think one of the dangerous sentiments from like people that don't experience racism is the concept that they think like overt racism isn't a thing anymore and that we don't experience it. That's like a thing of the past. So recently at Ole Miss Esports, we sort of disconnected ourselves from the term rebel that's used. It has like negative connotation and like racial division like on our campus. And so we've agreed not to just use it on social media or anything involving like Ole Miss Esports. And I've literally received so far 2 threats on Instagram. And I actually had to tweet out about this the other day saying like, if I end up like disappearing or something happens to me, foul play is involved, because like people have legitimately told me like, you better go back up north where you belong, like, or else. And just like to see sentiments like that, to me, it's just like, it's the whole like shut up and dribble mentality. It's like you care about me whenever like I have a controller in hand and I'm winning you like national championships. But the moment, you know, I speak out against like racial injustices that affect me directly, you have a problem with it, and like to the point where you threaten my livelihood. So I definitely think, like I said, that's a dangerous sentiment to have. Overt racism definitely is still a thing, and I definitely think it's still prevalent within this space too.
At UBC, it's a special situation because we're such a minority. We're like 1%, maybe less than 1% of the total student population is Black. So you definitely stand out, and not in a good way. I feel like just as a Black man on campus in general, I can't really afford to make mistakes because if I make a mistake, then all Black people are like that, right? I've never lost my temper. Actually, I have, but I was in my car alone. But not in public, because no matter how stressful things get, because otherwise I'm an angry Black man, and every Black man is super aggressive. I mean, just to put you in perspective, and keep in mind, like, this is every day, like this stuff adds up, and it is actually really exhausting. But at one of our Smash events, the one we did with UBC Rec, one of the volunteers apologized for just crossing paths. Like, they even bumped into me, they even walk too close, just said, "I'm sorry." I'm like, "Sorry for what?" He's like, "Oh, nothing." Like, what? And yeah, I always have to like make sure I'm not too aggressive. And another thing, just going back, is always having to prove yourself. I think, especially this is in the esports space, I think Black people always have to like prove themselves that yeah, I do play games. Yeah, I am a collegiate leader. Yeah. I mean, how many times have people like been, "Oh, wait, are you the guy?" It's like, "Yeah, I am the guy." No, I'm not white. No, I'm not Asian. I am the guy. Yeah, no, it's been an experience just last year, just every time proving yourself over and over and over and over, and it takes a toll on you at the end of the day. Yeah.
So in my experience of microaggressions that I've had whenever I've been trying to work my way through and into esports, it's been things like people assuming that because I'm Black and I play video games, I'm playing Madden or 2K. And sometimes, which I'm happy for, sometimes they just assume fighting games, so I'll take that. But it's the people don't think I'm interested in a lot of the more competitive strategy-based stuff a lot of the time, and that seems to be towards some things in particular. And for a more outright kind of disrespectful type of thing, just as I moderated a Discord server for a large group, there can be some pointed, heated language, including some pretty nasty words that borderline hate speech, and filtering and working my way through those, and seeing things said about you that are wrapped around in some racist language is pretty prevalent in a lot of what you do.
Yeah, and something I want to like ask about or like talk about a little bit more, if you guys don't mind, is the aggressive thing that you touched on, Arnaud. I feel like I've gotten that my entire life. You look really intimidating. You look really mean. You look really angry. And like I said, like as I've started to reflect on that over the last like year or two, I feel like that has to do with being a Black man. And I don't know how you guys fight that, but again, that's something that I've ran into as a leader in baseball, in like school activities, in esports, in regular gaming, just being an intimidating, aggressive character because I'm a skinny, like tall Black guy. You know what I mean? Like I don't know why that's such an issue, but that's like a problem I've had as a Black guy in gaming that I wish was not the way it is.
Yeah, so I think like for us, it's like a double-edged sword almost, because like if we're too serious, people have a problem with it. We're too aggressive. Right. Then again, if we turn around and try to be the friendly, like, friendly guy, we're not Black enough, or we're a pushover, right? So I definitely think it's a double-edged sword, and how I've sort of combated that is just trying to like, and it is sad that people have to like, or Black people have to do this on a regular basis, but the whole thing of like double consciousness and having to have like two different faces at all times. Like we go somewhere, and like when I'm with my esports friends, I have to be like the friendly guy. I don't want to be too aggressive or too overbearing. But then again, going into like an administrative meeting, I have to be the voice of reason and tell like this needs to be this needs to be how this goes, and this is why. So I definitely think like people are always going to have like negative connotations of us no matter how we conduct ourselves. But I would much rather somebody see me as like a stern like leader and have respect for me. They see me as like the goofy pushover guy that's not black enough, or whatever the case may be. Because at the end of the day, we're here to do business and we're here to further whatever it is that we're doing. So that's mostly what I care about.
Yeah, I'd say it's you face these situations every day. I for one have like the slump, which is like when it gets late. If I'm out late, like I'm not worried because I feel like I can take care of myself. But I feel like I have a duty to make sure other people aren't worried like of me. So like I'll put my shoulders down lower, I'll put my hands in my pocket so that they don't think I'm a threat at all. And I feel like kind of the fact that we have to like do these things or fulfill like these expectations to not appear aggressive or threatening. I mean, it can be damaging to a lot of people. Like you said, it's exhausting to have to think about this stuff and act in this way like 24/7, and almost have like dual mentality. Like what I'm doing okay for me, and how are they going to perceive this, and have to like think about that and how that's going to reflect on you and other Black people is just very unfortunate. That's how we have to deal with it. I think it's something that really needs to change. But moving on. In the collegiate esports field, I think representation is really important, and it's great that we have like club presidents like Sergio. We have CEOs of like Kid Collective, like with Jay, people in positions of leadership where like other Black people can look and say, hey, they made it, I can too. But for you guys, has the representation of other like Black people in esports, collegiate or professional, have they inspired you, and how have they helped you in your journey?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I mean, first of all, there's not that much to look up to. The representation for Black people in video games, to begin with, has always been bad. All right, always. Mm-hmm. With developers, it's been bad too. Diversity has always been an issue with them. And the same can be said with esports, from team owners to casters to you can always do progress in diversity. That's always going to be a problem until it's not a problem anymore. Mm-hmm. But for me, I think Etika was actually a big reason why I really thought that, he made, as a streamer, he really made me feel welcome in the Nintendo community as a Black man. And a lot of people used to call me Canadian Etika before. So I think that was a strong motivating factor from a Black man to another in the gaming community. Yeah.
So I came from a point where I didn't have very many, if any, Black representation or Black role models for me in esports or the gaming space in particular. I had a lot of people that I looked up to, but none that specifically looked or talked or acted a lot like I did. So it was kind of difficult for me to envision myself moving further into the scene without any idea of, is this a safe place for me, or is this something that is even like seen as okay or possible for right now? So it's been a little bit more difficult on that end, and I think that's a big issue that we have to try to see and fix within the greater esports community, is that there's Black people everywhere that play all these games and who could try to make it to be a pro and who could add a lot to all these organizations, and they're definitely out there, but we don't see them enough whenever it comes to hiring time, things like that.
Actually, I do want to say Ayan has been there for me last year, 100%. As a Black woman, she's helped me a ton, so I do want to give credit to that too. Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm. Shout out to her.
So yeah, with that, I'll give that for mine as well, because past that, I kind of share the same sentiment. Really, like I didn't really have anyone, growing up where it was just like, this is my guy. Because we had like LeBron growing up as like an athlete. That was the guy I looked at. Never had like that guy. I had Afro Moo's the guy we like all joke about, like with it's like having to look at to grow up. But it's not like we had much choice. You know what I mean? That we didn't have much choice to look at. So when it came of looking up to like a Black guy in esports and gaming, Afro was my guy, but again, like it's not really like I had much of a choice. Recently, somebody that I've looked up to is Rick Fox. And even like while I was going through high school was like Shaq being involved with esports as a whole. And then just from a leadership perspective, somebody that I'm sure we all share is Obama. That's like from as a leader and just like as a human being, that's somebody I look up to as like a black man. But again, like within gaming and esports, I think we just need to do better and be better. And that's why I stand up and do what I do. And that's why I stand with guys like the people on these panel who do what they do and lead the ways that we can. So like we said, like we can get seen eventually. So at the end of the day, it's not just, oh, where were they? Because we're right here, right now, trying to make sure that we're included. So that's kind of my deal.
Yeah. So like Arnaud said and like Jay said, we don't have many choices, obviously. Rick Fox was somebody that was big for me. And obviously it hit me kind of hard when Echo Fox sort of had their debacle and like fell apart. And it's sad to say, but it gets to a point where we sort of have to latch on to people that we think are just in tune with Black culture almost. So, I looked up to, the Hector Rodriguez's of Optic, like people like that, a person of color who might not look like me, but I have no choice but to hope that he can grasp somewhat of like what I go through in that space. Also, I'm a COD kid, so I grew up like watching H-Shot, and I would go in H-Shot stream and just have conversations with his community about hip hop music and just like hoping and praying that like he was in tune with what was going on. And if like something happened in the Black community, he would speak up on it. And I've always sort of like held on to that. And so that's why like I definitely feel like with all the recent happenings, like with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and all the other protests going on, it really opened my eyes to see where a lot of these people stand on a lot of these issues in terms of, staying silent. We just had the whole 100 Thieves debacle with the Activision tournament they were planning on putting on. So I'm definitely starting to look at a lot of these companies a lot different, especially the ones that like make money off of like Black aesthetics. So like you're 100 Thieves, your FaZe clans. I'm just gonna start like calling out people. Honestly,
I'll give the uncut if you're not gonna give the uncut.
100 Thieves and FaZe clan are like two that like really like blow my mind, and I know a lot of the FaZe executives have like come out and said stuff, but like it's just not enough. You have these big platforms that you can speak up and educate your fan base, because obviously if you look at their mentions when they do bring this stuff up, a lot of the fan base isn't in tune with what's going on, and like they have like racial undertones within them alone. So I'm definitely, like I said, there's not many for us to look up to, and I've sort of lost faith in even the white esports execs and like people in the scene that I sort of looked up to, and I'm slowly starting to realize that as a Black man in esports, that it's on us, and we don't really have people to look up to, so we have to be the people that come after us can look up to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That like even some esports organizations that have been donating to causes in favor of Black Lives Matter movement, like it's not always enough to just donate money and say that, hey, I donated $1 million, now I've done my job, right? It's also important that you like reach out to your player base and educate them, give them the resources to learn and to teach themselves and others what racism looks like, whether it's like we said overt or even like micro aggressive racism, even if it's like people not necessarily intending to be racist or treat you differently. I think it's pretty important for those organizations to like look and say, hey guys, this is actually what's going on, and have a more proactive role than just donating and kind of dropping your hands of it. But yeah, like you brought up Afro. He's like he's our token guy. And I mean, the reason is like there are a lot of Black people, I would say, in the fighting game community. But it's not the same status of league necessarily. Like it's not like reliable for income. It's not as popular. And so we have that one guy in that position, and that's like it. So on that point, what do you guys think can be done to improve representation? What steps need to be taken to give Black kids, Black teens, Black students, whatever it may be, the ability to find a role model that we didn't necessarily have the same opportunity to do?
I think first, guys like Hamlins and Daquan and Myth need to be given like the avenue or whatever, like the excuse is, the avenue to like make their voices heard. Because I know like even the content creator on the mob, a lot of these like black content creators that like sit in the positions to help these kids and help people under us, because like we don't need Myth to sit up and say something for us because we're doing it, but we need those guys to be able to reach down to these 10 and 12-year-olds to say, hey, you can do this, or hey, you can be a content creator, like we know, like you can be a president or whatever. I think it's giving the guys in the scene the tools to make their voices heard first. Like I think that's the biggest one, because like we've said, like we're here. We're all here. Everybody's here. We're all in esports. We're in collegiate. We're in grassroots. Like we're all here. We just need to be heard. And I think a big part of that is just giving us the tools to be heard.
Like I said before, I also think like it starts with us. Like we had nobody to look up to, so like I strive like as much as I can, and I'm sure the people sharing the panel with me can share the same sentiment. Like we try our hardest to set the precedent and to make sure that people that come after us know that it's possible. Like you can be the president of your collegiate esports organization. You can build your own collegiate esports organization, or you can build your own grassroots organization and be successful with it as a black man or a black woman or whatever the case may be, right? And I also think like we have to get rid of the stigma like within ourselves that video games is like a waste of time. I know when I was younger, like my parents specifically, like every time I turn on like my PlayStation, they'd be like, "Oh, you're just wasting your time," and I would try to emphasize to them like, "No, like this is something that I can actually like do." And no shame on my parents, because like that's just the generation we grew up in where it was seen as that, right? But I think that stigma is slowly starting to shift. And I think if we really get in tune with ourselves as black people and start to see esports as a potential avenue within our own households, then I definitely think we'll start to see a shift in the talent pool in terms of like black e-athletes.
I definitely think brands need to be taking a look and just really seeing that there's a huge demographic of black nerds out there that have no products and nothing out there that's like tailor-made specifically for them and by them. If you had a black content creator on your team, we could tell in your content. Like it's something that as soon as you get that and you break that mold and you do that, you're going to have a lot of people completely invested and interested in your organization just because of that.
I think there is a lot of work to be done by so many different facets and organizations. Balancing, the brands, absolutely. If you want to make more money, just expand your target demographic, include black people. I think one thing is, even in video games, I think diversity is super, super, super important, because and who you market to, it's really an inclusion, because we have, black people is one thing, but even women is another thing, just in gaming in general, right? That's a whole other problem. And I think that's why black women really get the worst of the worst, as we saw with the other panel, because they get the racism and the sexism as well. So I think developers need to do better. I think, and in order for that to happen, I do think that you need to hire a diverse range of different types of people, because if I'm let's say I'm white, maybe my first thought won't be, hey, let's program maybe the default character to not be white for once, and the same goes for teams, the same goes for everything. It's really a trickle down effect. It's also it can't be just a trend either. I think that's another thing that's been on black people's minds, especially mine, is this movement, eventually it will die down, but at the end of the day, our skin color won't die down. Like you can't take a break from being black. You can't take a break from being black. I think the effort needs to be continuous. So I think that's going to be really important. Another thing I do want to touch on is I do think that as black people, we really, really need to come together and help each other out. Because I think white people help each other out, Asian people help each other out, all these different communities really help each other out. It's really important that we stick together, and we keep on fighting as well.
And like to sort of touch on what you said before, like about diversity, like one of the things that like really blows my mind is like, when you mentioned hiring more like diverse people within your company, the first thing people go to is, oh, why are you hiring off how people look instead of like, their skill sets? And it's like, there's black people in these roles that are talented, a lot of times more talented than their white counterparts, but because of the color of their skin, you don't get them the time of day. So like, we're here. And like Jay said, like there's plenty of people in this industry that are people of color, specifically Black people, that you can hire and will get the job done better than a lot of the people that you already have like within your company. So it's on these companies to actually make the outreach and make that leap to start hiring more of us, whether it be in content or social media or in other executive roles, to help run the company. Like we're here, we're just waiting for the opportunity.
Look further than your nose in most cases, because like we know, we've probably all have some experience working in professional esports. Like you guys know, they reach out to their friends. Like I'm a professional esports at this point. It's like you reach out to your friends. It's way easier to reach out to your friends and find somebody that's in your immediate network, which 9 times out of 10 is a white guy in esports. To reach out and find those guys, you know what I mean? And like now, like we need people to actually look around. We need to actually look for those Black talent that's out there, those Black artists, those Black content creators, those Black editors. We're here, like you said, like we're all here. We just need to be found. We just need to be like we're not your guys' friends anymore. Like we're not the friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. We're just a Black guy down the street that's really good at editing, and we just need to be given that chance. And truthfully, like we said, like we're not given that chance. And I think one of the solutions is just reaching out, trying to find these people.
And I think that really ties into gatekeeping. I think esports already has some pretty big gatekeeping, but I think it's pretty gatekept from Black people. That's just a feeling that I've had in the couple of years in the industry. I didn't feel that with the Smash community at all. But as soon as I became president and I had to work with all these other games, I definitely felt a lot more gatekeeping. And I felt it sometimes it was because I was Black. Absolutely. I don't think that's like a secret. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's always important to we've talked about a lot today. I think it's important to remember that yes, this movement will eventually die down. It's impossible to keep this going for literally ever. Eventually it'll die down. I think the important thing is to not let it die down until we enact real change in the world, to have an impact and to push through until things are better for Black people in esports, in life, in jobs, and to keep at it until we've made a difference. And like only then can we let it die down. And then big steps to that are representation, making sure our voices are heard, and that the people in the positions for their voices to reach a lot of people are using them for that, and really banding together to try and get more representation, for it to be treated fair in social situations and in communities and professionally. But it looks like we are running out of time for the rest of this panel. So I do want to thank you guys for all of your time. It was really wonderful to have all of you guys talking about your experiences and your thoughts on racism and your treatment in collegiate esports and the world at large. This was a really cool panel to have with you guys. And for everyone watching, there will be probably an audio an audio recording, because the video is not too hot for 98% of this. There will definitely be an audio recording released out after the fact that you guys can go ahead and listen to. Just keep an eye on the ICGN Twitter, and we'll give you a tweet where that's going to be accessible when it's there. But one more time, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. This has been a great panel, and I hope you all have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Of course.